This is the monkey covering the Weird Sisters by Terry Pratchett. The wind howled, lightning stabbed at the earth erratically, like an efficient assassin. The thunder rolled back and forth across the dark, rain-lashed hills. The night was as black as the inside of a cat. It was the kind of night you could believe on which gods mode moved men as though they were pawns of a chessboard of fate. In the middle of the elemental storm, a fire gleamed among the dripping fuzz of burnt bushes like the madness in a weasel's eye. It illuminated three hunched figures as the cauldron bubbled, and eldritch voice shrieked, "When shall we meet again?" There was a pause. Finally, another voice said, in a far more ordinary tone, "Well, I can do next Tuesday." Through the fathomless depths of space swims the star turtle, great Atuan, bearing on its back the four giant elephants who carry on their shoulders the mass of the disk world. A tiny sun and moon spin around them on a complicated orbit to induce seasons. So probably nowhere else in the multiverse is it sometimes measure necessary for an elephant to cock a leg to allow the sun to go past. Exactly why this should be may never be knows. Yes, it actually says that. Possibly the creator of the universe got bored with all the usual business of axial inclination, albedos, and rotational velocities, and decided to have a bit of fun for once. It would be a pretty good bet that the gods of a world like this probably do not play chess. And indeed, this is the case. In fact, no gods anywhere play chess. They haven't got the imagination. Gods prefer simple, vicious games where you do not achieve transcendence but go straight to oblivion. Dun dun dun. A key to understanding all of religion is that the god's idea of amusement is snakes and ladders with greased rugs or rungs. Yeah, magic glues the disc world together. Magic generated by the turning of the world itself. Magic would like silk out of the underlying structure of existence to suture the wounds of reality. A lot of it ends up in the Rampus Mountains, which stretch from the frozen lands near the hub all the way via a lengthy archipelago, archipelago to the warm seas which flow endlessly into space over the rim. Raw magic crackles invisibly from peak to peak, and earth itself in the mountains. It is the ramtums that supply the world with most of its witches and wizards, and the ramtons that leave the leaves on the trees move even when there is no breeze. Ugh. Rocks go for a stroll of an evening. Even the land at times seems alive. At times, so does the sky. The storm was really giving it everything it had. This was its big chance. It had spent years hanging around the provinces, putting in some useful work as a squaw, building up experience, making contacts, occasionally leaping out on the unsuspecting shepherds, or blasting quite small oak trees. Now an opening in the weather had given it an opportunity to strut its hour, and it was building up its role in the hope of being spotted by one of the big climates. It was a good storm. There was quite effective protection and passion there, and critics agreed that if it would only learn to control its thunder, it would be in years to come a storm to watch. The woods roared their applause and were fully of mists, and flying leaves. On nights such as these, the gods, as has already been pointed out, play games other than chess with the fates of mortals and the thrones of kings. It is important to remember that they always cheat right up to the end. And a coach came hurtling along the rough forest track, jerking violently as the wheels bounced off tree roots. The driver lashed at the team. The desperate crack of his whip provided a rather neat counterpoint to the crash of the tempest overhead. Behind, only a little way behind, and getting closer, were three hooded riders. Ooh, sounds good. Okay. On nights such as this, evil deeds are done, and good deeds, of course. Hmm. But mostly evil, on the whole. On nights such as this, witches are abroad. Well, not actually abroad. They don't like the food, and you can't trust the water. And the shamans always hog the deck chairs. But there was a full moon bursting the red clouds, and the rushing air was full of whispers, and the very broad hint of magic. In their clearing above the forest, the witches spoke thus: I am babysitting on Tuesday, said one with no hat and a thatch of white curls, so thick she might have been wearing a helmet. For our Jason's youngest, I can manage Friday. Hurry up with the tea, love. I'm that parched. The junior member of the trio gave a sigh and ladled some boiling water out of the cauldron into the teapot. The third witch patted her hand in a kindly fashion. You said it quite well, she said. Just a bit more work on the screeching. Ain't that right, Nanny Og? Very useful screeching, I thought, said Nanny Og hurriedly, and I can see a googly whimper. Mission Siss's face gave you a lot of help with the squint. It's a good squint, said Granny, whether it was the junior witch, whose name was Margaret Gerlich, relaxed considerably. She held Granny Witherwax in awe. It was known throughout the Ramtop Mountains that Miss Witherwax did not approve of anything very much. If she said it was a good squint, then Medrat's eyes were probably staring up her own nostrils. Unlike wizards who like nothing better than complicated hierarchy, witches don't go in much for the structured approach to career progression. It's up to each individual witch to take on a girl to hand the area over to when she dies. Witches are not by nature gregarious, at least with other witches, and they certainly don't have leaders. Granny Weatherwax was the most highly regarded of the leaders they didn't have. Medrat's hands shook slightly as they made the tea. Of course, it was all very gratifying, but it was a bit nerve-wracking to start one's working life as village witch. Village witch between Granny and, on the other side of the forest, Nanny Og. It'd been her idea to form a local coven. She felt it was more, well, a cult. To her amazement, the other two had agreed, or at least hadn't disagreed much. An oven? Nanny Og had said. What do we want to join an oven for? She meant a coven, Geetha, Granny Weatherwax had explained. You know, like in the old days, a meeting. A knee up, said Nanny Og hopefully. No dancing, Granny had warned. I don't hold with dancing, or singing, or getting overexcited, or all messing about with ointments and similar. Does you good getting out, Nanny happily, said Nanny happily. Margaret had been disappointed about the dancing and was relieved that she hadn't ventured one or two other ideas that had been on her mind. She fumbled in the packet she had brought with her. It was her first Sabbath, and she was determined to do it right. Would anyone care for a scone? She said. Granny looked hard at hers before she bit. Margaret had baked hat designs on it. They had little eyes made of currants. The coach crashed through the trees at the forest edge, ran on two wheels for a few seconds as it hit a stone, righted itself against all the laws of balance, and rumbled on. But it was going slower now. The slope was dragging at it. The coachman, standing upright in the manner of a person holding a door, pushed his hair out of his eyes and peered through the murk. No one lived up there in the lap of the ram top themselves, but there was a light ahead. Oh, a charioteer, not someone holding up a door, a charioteer, whatever that is. So he's the one doing the saying that no one lived up there in the lap of the ram tops themselves, but there was a light ahead. So he's saying that. By all that was merciful, there was a light there. An arrow buried itself in the coach roof behind him. Meanwhile, King Varus, monarch of Lancre, was making a discovery. Like most people at any rate, below the age of 60 or so, Varus hadn't experienced his mind much, exercised his mind much about what happened to you when you died. Like most people since the dawn of time, he assumed it all somehow worked out all right in the end. And like most people since the dawn of time, he was now dead. He was in fact lying at the bottom of one of his own stairways in Lancre Castle with a dagger in his back. He sat up and was surprised to find that while someone he was certainly inclined to think of as was sitting up, something very much like his body remained lying on the floor. It was a pretty good body. Incidentally, now he came to see it from outside for the first time. He had always been quite attached to it, although he had to admit this did not now seem to be the case. It was big and well muscled. He looked after it. He'd allowed it a mustache and long flowing locks. He'd seen it get plenty of healthy outdoor exercise and lots of red meat. Now, just when a body would have been useful, it had let him down or out. On top of that, he had come to terms with a tall, thin figure standing beside him. Most of it was hidden in a hooded black robe, but the one arm, while extended from the folds to grip a large scythe, was made of bone. When one is dead, there are things one instinctively recognizes. Hello, Verence drew himself up to his full height. What would have been his full height if that part of him which the word height could have been applied was not lying stiff on the floor, but facing a future in which only the word death could appropriate. I am a king, mark you, he said. Was, your majesty. What? Varian barked. I said was. It's called the past tense. You'll soon get used to it. And that is the end of